Speaking of 30%, I guess Wrestle Cringe is back, and his brain's functioning on 30% of its capacity. There's a glitch in the I don't know. Is that a good segue? I'm trying here, guys. So there's a glitch in the AEW multiverse here. So Wrestle Cringe tweets or X's out. A fighting champion defending in a bomb-ass match on free TV is good, actually. Wrestle Cringe somehow got his Twitter back. And then JD from NY goes, like, and JD's talking like he ain't been doing the same shit for a long time. But yeah. JD goes, bro, honestly, shut the f up. Your gimmick is dead. You used to be cool. Now you're an agenda that pushes tribalism just like everyone else. Adds nothing of value to this case. A champion defending against someone who just lost his title a week ago to the man challenging for the title at the next pay-per-view while claiming he is next strong and similar to the boss while screaming he is number 2 in the rankings that haven't been updated since April 6, 2024 is not good TV. You're as washed as AEW Creative. Now, the reason I bring this to the show is because
he turned on them.
There's a lot of people, though, who are like, listen, and we're going to get to Alfred Konua Pro Wrestling Bits video where he actually shouted me out. Shout out Alfred. You know, he gave me an honorable mention in his top 5 AEW quote-unquote haters. Like people who, I don't know, we're going to watch it here on the show. We're going to watch it. I'm going to play it and shout him out for that. But I bring this to the show because it's like there's sort of a movement now where these people are shifting and they're shifting their opinion now because it's sort of the cool thing to do.
And there's no leg to stand on. You can't stand on the same hill.
Nah,
you died on those hills. You lost a leg on that bullshit hill that you were standing on, and now you're going to limp over to the other side. You surrendered, and now you're switching sides. Like you
and I'm okay with that. But these no, don't be sorry, man. I'm just saying I'm okay with it. But as like a creator in the space, it's just like, listen. And I'm all for, like, I shouted out JD. He unblocked me. At least he's man enough to do that. Here's my whole thing: is that we can't be too quick to just start giving these guys all these flowers, right? I didn't get no flowers for standing on the business I was standing on when people were fucking dragging me and I had to trudge through the slime to get to where people actually understand, okay, Pro Wrestle Times, Phil Marks is actually, he is an AEW fan. He's trying his best to enjoy this.
We're all trying.
Well, Awful's not. Awful's just like, nah, fuck it, you know, shoot the pilot.
I mean, but at least he's being objective in his criticisms. I haven't heard Awful say anything that couldn't be backed by simply watching.
And that's why
maybe the delivery isn't what people want it to be, and he's not going to kiss it.
2 + 2 is 4. Just because he says 2 + 2 is 4 doesn't mean it's not. And
I'm with you, Phil, on the JD from New York. Oh, go read this.
Sorry, $5. People finally realize that Cornette and Last have been right all along, and we'll give that one an air horn as well. Thank you.
Shout out to Mrs. Corny for the follow for you.
Yeah, shout out Mrs. Corny, who actually follows PWT.
Nice.
Which is a fact. Gave me a follow the other week. So shout her out. And Jim will be soon. I'm sure Mrs. Corny's going to tap him in eventually. Awful. Sorry. Your thoughts on the it's not just a him thing. It's a content creators in general, like Solomonster and all these guys.
Right. It's going where the tide is shifting, essentially. I mean, that's all it is as far as from a business and marketing standpoint. There's so many times you can rah-rah for AEW. Here's the surprising thing. I like how it's come all so very late. It's too late. This kind of thing reached its peak at the Wembley attendance numbers and the credibility checking with all of these guys. Oh, was it 80,000? Was it 70,000? But then it started falling off from there because it was just like, listen, you can't protect what we're seeing with our own 2 eyes. You can't tell me that Orange Cassidy is a draw. You can't tell me that the Young Bucks are doing great business. You can't tell me that Tony Khan is a great booker week in and week out. You're going to lose your credibility. So these guys are doing an about face, things that, you know, have always been known. They're finally recognizing what it is. I think it's purely from a marketing standpoint. I think they've always believed this type of shit, but because they wanted the access with Tony Khan and AEW, they thought they were going to get in like a Will Washington or that one guy, that guy, the bald white guy. But these guys
come on, man. People are getting mad. They're getting mad at you. Sorry, Awful, not to veer off, but people are like, sure. And Awful deleted his tweet that said, You're allowed to delete tweets. Everyone deletes tweets, guys. Calm down. It's like
what tweet did I delete?
I don't know. They're saying like, oh, he deleted his response or something. Maybe
Where are the
they
receipts?
weren't referring to you, and I misunderstood. But
I didn't delete anything.
Okay, then
And
sorry,
even then,
So
you're allowed to change your mind when you get new information. Like I agree with Awful 100%.
Yeah.
I think that your switch change. It's the change of the tides, and they're trying to, you know what I mean? They're trying to get to land. I completely get that.
And here's the thing: I'm going to stay on point regardless. When I make these WWE videos that get 700 views, I'm going to stay making them. Sorry, Marty, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're good. All I'm saying is, like, for the objective, legit journalists, because that's how these people want to be seen. If that's how you're doing it, you're allowed to get new information. You're allowed to be wrong. You're allowed to change your mind. Just be upfront about it, and then not be so harsh in the criticisms as if you weren't being delusional beforehand and making it seem like you had no eyes and couldn't see. You wanted this access, and you knew all you had to do was kiss his ass to get the access. But my thing is you tell the fucking truth. When it's good,
worth it?
It's good.
When your super chats go down, was it worth it? When your subscriber base goes down over time, I think that's what happened to these guys. They're never going to say like, "Hey, you know what? My subscriber count kind of went down a little bit. Actually, I'm not getting as many super chats as I used to get." They're not going to tell you that to you. What they're going to keep on doing, like JD from New York, he's going to keep screaming at you. He blocked me for some reason. I never.
They're all doing the yes chant. Yeah, JD had me blocked. Then I released a clip where I tagged his channel in it, and I said, "Yo." I was like, like you're saying what I was saying a year ago, JD. It's all good. You're stealing Phil Marks' gimmick now. I was doing a bit. He found it funny, obviously, because he unblocked me. Now,
he blocked me.
So I'm glad. But there's guys like Solomonster who just like talk shit to me, blocked me, and then will never unblock me. Obviously, even though he's shifting as well, and just saying the shit we were saying months ago. That's what drives me the most insane is that like guys like Brian Alvarez are like, "Hello, am I the only one seeing this here?" And it's like, what are you talking about?
Right.
Dave blocked me for seeing this shit and pointing it out. Like, it's just
Brian Alvarez in the circle. Yeah, Brian Alvarez knows what's going on too. I'm sure his subscriber counts and his monetary values dropping down. It may not be big. I'm not saying that these guys are losing thousands, but just even a drop, they're like, "Uh-oh, I see where this tide is changing." Who's doing well in the X sphere? Who's doing well on YouTube? Oh, it seems like these anti-AEW accounts are
I don't
doing
even like being
right.
labeled that guy. I just try to be the funny wrestling guy.
It's so funny because I was just like, you love the shout out from Kanua, but it was just like, what are you labeled as? An AEW hater? And just like
exactly.
I think that was ironic.
Yeah. But I think Phil's trying to run far away from that, and so are a lot of people that I know are trying to run away. And it's just like it's not anti-AEW; it's just stark.
No, it's like who do you guys know that supports? Like I've probably got more people to watch AEW than any man. I'm the one here. Like I don't know, dude. I don't know. That's
It doesn't even seem that you're anti. It's just you're calling the bullshit when it happens.
Exactly, and I call the bullshit too, dude. I was just talking shit about, and I was watching NXT, and I'm like, I don't with this Heritage Cup shit at all. The concept's bad. It's not booked well. It never worked. It didn't work when ROH or TNA tried the same thing, and no one gets outraged. But then I say some shit about MJF, and I go, "Oh, he was cosplaying this company, trying to be funny." And then people are like, "Oh, come on, man, come on." It's like, I don't know. It's selective outrage, sort of.
George Captor said something beautiful. He said Alvarez also realized that when he argues with Dave, they get the views. And there it is right there.
Exactly. And so I think that's more what it is. Like, because you've asked me before, like, what do you think it is that Alvarez is seeing? What, after all these years, what is it? Mm-hmm. I just don't think it's anything. I think Alvarez is just, they know they're drumming up views. And when Alvarez goes to those press conferences, they just clown him anyways.
Right.
And then George also says, JD also says axe instead of axe. Yeah, a lot of people do that. A lot of my friends do that, bro. I don't know what you mean by that, bro. But yeah, but yeah, man. I'm definitely not a hater on anybody who's crossing the road, if you will. But
but you gotta shame him a little bit, just a little bit. You can't be. Yeah, there have been people been like, "Oh my God, he's so cool. He turned the corner." What are you talking about? Hold on, doesn't he have a long way to go towards rehabilitation? Like, he could find next week's Dynamite show fantastic, and once again, he's right back on the road of bullshit.
Yeah.
So I mean, Give it time.
Yeah.
Vet these people. Give them a little bit of shame.
Yeah, we got to give each other
it
flowers.
It has to make sense.
We got to give each other flowers like Pro Wrestling Bits Alfred Konuwa did. To circle back to that, we're going to play that video in full. I'm sure he'll be cool. He'll be cool if I do it. But
homie didn't mention me one time.
he gave flowers though. Well, it was a top 5 list, and the fact he even included me in it, I want to tell him is like I shouldn't even be included in it. You know what I mean? I shouldn't even be included like as an honorable mention. So shit, that's joking, top 6 or 7.
Yeah. 10, don't get off of it. I think I literally think that also like the top 5. It's the irony because Alfred kind of said something similar when he was on with you. It was just, it's not that he's a hater. He's just calling out the bullshit.
Right.
And he's looked at as a hater. He's being objective. So I think when he's talking about top 5 haters, I think that he's just like, it's sarcasm.
It's in quotes. No, it is. It's top 5 quote unquote haters. You know, like it's not like he explains it at the start. We'll go through it. But I think it's funny I'm even mentioned on there, but it's how like even people in the chat, they're like, oh, I listen to Jim Cornette and Eric Bischoff and PWT, and it's like, how am I even mentioned in the same? I must be doing something right. So I don't know, and I just people like Alfred's giving everyone their flowers. The people who've been in the pocket the whole time, standing 10 toes down, going, no, dude, like I want this to survive, or like, but like here's the criticisms that are objective, and this is what could be better. And I'm not looking to interview Tony Khan. Like it makes no, I will, you know, but I don't, if that never happens in my life, that's fine. I just want this to be the best thing it can be, and don't want to be, you know, like don't, like, I don't know. It's just this.
He's just trying to be objective.
Right. That's all it boils down to. And so Alfred's giving the flowers, and you see a lot of people like giving it up to JD and these other guys who are finally crossing the street. And it's like, well, let's not forget the people who like trudged through the shit so these guys could grow flowers. You know what I mean?
No, yeah, you fertilized it.
We must shame them. Shame them.
Shame. But you know what it is too? It's like, okay, if you see people like action movies, you see spies, or it's like, okay, if I'm in one gang, right, and they're clearly losing, they're clearly the inept side, and then I want to switch sides and go over the other one, and I'm doing it for survival. They're doing it for their, you know, for their super chats, for their subscriptions. They're doing it for survival. Here's the thing. If they allow you to come over to the other side, nobody trusts you at the beginning. You got to earn your keep. You have to be consistent. You have to show loyalty, and you have to, you know, show improve, or else they'll put you out. Or nobody's going to trust the person that switched sides. Like this takes a lot of time. You got to prove your merit.
I'll forgive JD once he unblocks me. Not that I give a shit if he does or not, but
yeah,
I didn't know the guy. But
at least he'll unblock you. He won't unblock me just because he likes to say a lot of stupid shit, and now he thinks, because I also think that's why Solomon Monster is giving you shit, because it's the whole House of Glory connection in a sense. I think that's like part of it. I think, and shout out to my boy Wilkins. He's over there doing, you know what I'm saying? He's over there doing his thing. And I noticed that when JD asked him to come on his show, I think he was trying to bridge some gaps. I don't necessarily think it's the most authentic, because he has a habit of saying really crude, stupid shit on a racial level. But which I also think he's playing sides and trying to switch up with that. So my thing is like, okay, you're going to switch your side. You tried to switch sides to get back in with one demographic, and now you're trying to move over with the masses because now you can all of a sudden see what everybody else is seeing. It's like, nah, man, you got to prove this shit. Full of shit.
Tell us why you were wrong. How about that? Tell us exactly why you were thinking the way you were 3-4 years ago. We all had the same pair of goddamn eyes. What were you thinking?
It boils down to optimism. Like, I just wanted it to be good, you know. I wanted to will it. Anyways, so guys, at Pro Wrestling Bits, go subscribe to Alfred Konuwa. I'll be collaborating with him in the future for sure, and you'll see him back in the PWT universe as well. But here's his latest video. Alfred, great guy, buddy. I'm sure you won't try and copyright strike me for playing this here, but it's a bit of a longer one, but this is a great video. And Wheeler Yuta just pinned some CMLL guy, so who gives a shit at this point with Dynamite, right, folks? So here's the truth about wrestling's greatest AEW hater.
Do you hate AEW? I don't. Yes. And I don't think any of the people on this list do. But for one reason or another, certain voices in the wrestling space, usually the ones who don't have a problem giving an unfiltered opinion, find themselves at odds with both AEW and its fan base. AEW hateration is a growing industry. Even some of AEW's diehards are slowly carnying their way into what they once called bad faith criticism. Funny how criticizing AEW
are slowly carnying their way. Alfred's just, I love him, man. I love him.
is becoming a popular genre unto itself. Why? Because though no AEW stan clutching a media scrum credential will admit this, most of AEW's criticism is absolutely legit. This is something the, quote, haters on this list knew before anybody. AEW continues to struggle as new TV deal negotiations are...
I love that he made this video because it's like, you don't... God damn, he's giving us our flowers, dude. And like, not that like it... Like, I don't give a shit about it, but just the fact that a guy that I respect, like Alfred, you know, that's really cool, man. I just want to point that out. You know what I mean? Like, right. Yeah, I don't know. This is just, I thought this was really cool. And it's a video. It's a good concept because I harp about this a lot. Like, man, we've all been saying this, you know, I'm always yelling about it, but he just compartmentalized it in a video. And I'm like, and it's like a good way to do it. I don't know. He's really good at what he does, man. And shout out this channel. If you're not, you guys are probably all subscribed. Alfred's got more subscribers than me, but yeah, if you're not, go check out Pro Wrestling Bits. All of his videos are stellar, I find.
Underway, and the struggle has given way to an explosion in the, quote, AEW hater industry. It's AEW's own fault, really, because speaking for myself, I don't want to see AEW fail. AEW zealots are essentially the Eagles fans of pro wrestling, but without the sense of humor. They're like the extreme liberals and even the far right who try to cancel everybody with a cross word to say about their party and all these leaders who don't give a shit about them. So seeing AEW's struggle is sad for the wrestlers they employ, but it's so satisfying for the self-righteous supermarks who dedicate their careers to defending Tony Khan by throwing matching temper tantrums. Today, we're going to rank the top 5 AEW haters in the business. And I use the term haters loosely because to be an AEW hater, you also have to keep up with the product, watch every show, and deliver your public criticism. So essentially, you have to be engaged with AEW. Tell me, how is that any different from supporting the product? It's not, because we're not the problem. AEW is.
Wow, the gut punch. Yeah. The infamous gut punch.
Subscribe in Swahili. By the way, it's an election year, and my new favorite way to read news is...
Okay, he reads an ad, and I'm going to skip that because I don't get paid by these motherfuckers, so...
Seen a video from Wendover Productions that talks about negativity bias. And there's but on average, the negative videos just do better. Don't credit for hating AEW long before hating on AEW was cool. Before we get
hits us with a QR code. So here's the honorable mentions. He gave a criteria. So here's the honorable mentions, and Alfred laid out some criteria. Now, he's like, you got to watch all of AEW, which I do. I love that Alfred is rising other people with him. You know, I just like that shit, and that's very important. It's just, it feels good. That's what I enjoy more than anything, is just seeing like all the bros and then just being compared to like, you know, the first entry, whatever will stooge it. He brings up Disco and first, like, I shouldn't even be brought up. You know what I mean? I shouldn't even be in the same breath.
It's like a new wave of podcasts are rising up. Yeah, actually. I mean, this is the new, these guys, you guys will be the new Salamonsters and JDs and, you know, these long-standing
middle of the road 2.0 NXT.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to be, dude. I'm just trying to have fun. I'm just trying to be the Red Bar mixed with like old ONA mixed with like Friday night type.
Okay, get rid of the Red Bar. You can throw that out.
Why, you don't like Red Bar?
Red Bar.
Oh, come on, awful. I thought that'd be your cup of tea, dude.
Nah, man.
I'd be remiss if I didn't give a couple honorable mentions to Marvin the Movie Monster and Pro Wrestling Times. Also,
so here's the thing, though, Alfred, use my other main channel next time. 700.
Look at this guy. See, you can't please these guys. I mean,
no, dude. No, I all day I was saying that joke. All day I was doing on that joke. I was like, damn it, he should have showed my other channel where I got way more subs. But that's actually good because I'm trying to get that channel to 1,000 subs. So shout that out. But and then he called me Pro Wrestling Times. God damn, it's Pro Wrestling Times.
Okay, so we will put it up in your list of grievances when he comes back on.
Damage. I'm just playing. I just put it over for like a millennia there before I hit play. So I'm just obviously tongue in cheek here. But yeah, this is I love being mentioned even in the same breath as like the names that get brought up on the top list.
5, I'd be remiss if I didn't give a couple honorable mentions to Marvin the Movie Monster and Pro Wrestling Times. Also, shouts to Chris and company. Subscribe to their channels because, like a lot of AEW haters, these guys are entertaining, they don't take themselves too seriously, and they're funny AF. Let's start with number 5 and keeping it 100. This will be an eclectic list of wrestlers, bookers, historians, writers, and real-ass niggas. Guess which one I am? Keeping it 100 represents the wrestler's perspective of
Orion?
AEW's flaws. It features former WCW stars Conan and Disco Inferno. Keeping it 100 has no problem criticizing both fans and media, which I think is part of the beauty of wrestlers being able to create their own platforms in media these days. Fanalists go so hard at these wrestlers and promotions, but are often left out of being critiqued themselves. Spaces like Keeping It 100 give a voice to the wrestler who can now clap back and talk just as crazy to these people as they do to the talent. Sounds fair to me. Plus, Disco Inferno is in the category of having a Kermit the Frog voice, and he really should have been in that Family Guy cutaway with.
Oh my God, Alfred!
I think it's more Ray Romano than Kermit the Frog.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
shit,
maybe
you're right.
Man. Yeah.
God, dude, that's hilarious. Alfred Savage, man, I love it. This is my favorite.
With Kermit, Ray Romano, Al Michaels, and Harold.
Yeah, from the Family Guy bit, he's got Ray Romano, Kermit, Al Michaels. Oh my goodness.
Ramus, because he sounds just like them. This gonna be like, AEW and the mark-ass AEW media refuse to criticize Tony Khan because they don't want their access to the AEW snow parties to be revoked. Number 4.
The snow parties. Like, there's way too many people who make those jokes for it not to be true. You know? And we all hear things, but it's like, come on, man. Everyone says it.
I'm not making that joke.
Yeah, I don't
You can't wait for me to make that joke. I'll be off the fucking Twitterverse quick.
Yeah.
Okay, we gotta get a Patreon started.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, awful. You'll make other. You'll call me redacted and make a.
Yeah, we gotta talk off the air, my friend, about that as well.
Vince Russo, bro. I like Vince.
They're so used to catering to customers they already have. They have totally forgotten how to get new customers. So there's no new people watching wrestling, bro.
But
watching wrestling, bro.
Vince hates everything. Okay, maybe not everything, but he's a very tough crowd. And if you've reached the highest of highs of the wrestling business after following it for decades, you'd be difficult to impress too. Ironically, most AEW fans are this way because of the amount of professional wrestling they've watched before AEW came along. This is why Tony Khan feels the need to go deep into the internet wrestling weeds to cater to the impossible to impress hardcores. How's that working for you? Russo has commented on Tony Khan's Meltzerian booking and how Tony's Wrestling Observer training wheels are one of AEW's biggest Achilles heels. He's nonplussed by the AEW big-name signings like Mercedes Moné and Kazuchika Okada. He hated Tony Khan's goofy-ass neck brace the way everybody else did. And if you like a little balance with your haterade, Vince thinks today's WWE superstars are unprofessional and isn't all that big of a fan of Cody Rhodes, which is where him and I differ. You can't come for Cody like that. You crossed the line, bro. But I'm not an AEW.
It's photoshopped with MLK and shit. Great show, guys. Watching from Australia. Another shrimp on the barbie. Just kidding. I'm just trying to be an asshole. Watching from Australia, I've been trying to understand what's in it for Brian Alvarez to be affiliated with Meltzer. You guys get this IWC media thing better than me, so just asking. Dude, I think we touched on it before, but it's the money. Like, they do have a good... Think about, like, let's say 5,000 people subscribe to Meltzer every month. Let's say give them $12.99 a month. 5,000 people. That's probably lowballing it too. There's probably more than that, right? Or
the way that he talks, with the bravado that Meltzer has, even consistently being wrong and never giving us like a firm stanced opinion on anything, you can tell that they have the money. But I guess with the Alvarez, I lightweight, just to shoot Alvarez a little bit of bail, I lightweight think he's just being a businessman. Like, when he fights back, I think he does it with such like fervor because he probably legit thinks that this shit is stupid, but he knows like business is business. So when he can argue with Dave about it, it's like, oh shit, he gets to live his truth. Like I get to speak freely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they get clicks too. And like, but I just ultimately think that they're making a lot of cash. And you got to think too, ad reads, like them being, I think they are like on a radio station and stuff like that as well. So just all of that. It's like, why would Brian walk away from any of it? He can just disagree with Dave and then they leave it on the show. They're obviously friends. They're obviously professional. But what's in it is when Dave is so old and gray that he's not going to be doing any of this anymore. Like
Brian will take over the shit.
Brian takes over and then he'll have his guy that he's grooming or whatever. No Diddy. But yeah, so that's what's in it for him. Greatest AEW hater, which your boy Phil Marks made the list at least as an honorable mention. So let's continue this video.
You Supermark, so Vince Russo doesn't have to worry about me looking up his phone number and calling his house to complain. Not that this has ever happened to me, wink, wink. In fact, if AEW hatred was really all that manufactured, it wouldn't attract the entire spectrum of the wrestling business. Think about it. How are Vince Russo and Jim Cornette able to be on the same page about how shitty AEW is these days?
Exactly. That right there. Oh, they're both grifting. No, it's somewhere in the middle of we want to be wrestling and wrestling focused, but then it's like so car wreck cheesy phony that even Vince Russo's like, this is too cheesy and Jerry Springerish or whatever. I don't know if he's ever used that term, bro.
I think people who know the story about Jim Cornette and his numerous conversations with Tony Khan, I think people should start collecting money for Jim Cornette to pay his legal fees, because I think everybody's going to want to see him break that NDA and talk about what the fuck him and Tony Khan talked about on those phone calls leading up to the advent of AEW.
And say what you will about Jim Cornette, but fucking everything he said about AEW slowly but surely ends up seemingly like it's right. You know, like this whole time. And he's like, I knew it because I talked to Tony. He's like, at first I was like, yeah, I took a meeting with him.
This guy he's seen so many companies come and go over his almost 50 years, in being in this industry. He knows what's going on. He knows what works and what doesn't work. While there was AEW here, back then there was like 30 companies. And you heard about 15 of them dropping because of the same type of atmosphere that was going on. So it's very easy for Jim Cornette to call this. Not so much for Russo. I mean, Russo hasn't been around that long as far as seeing and experiencing drop-offs and rising. Well, what the fuck am I talking about? He has been, but just only in WCW and with WWF.
They hate each other. Cornette got fired from TNA for threatening to murder Vince Russo. I thought about getting us all together for a real-life version of this dogs playing poker thumbnail, like the AEW Player Haters Ball. But if that happened, Jim Cornette would immediately start barking at Vince Russo. Then he'd bite Vince. Russo would retaliate by pissing all over Cornette's tennis racket. And by the end of that brawl, we'd all have rabies. So fuck that. I don't want the white man's rabies. Do you? Number 3 on this list is Easy.
Shit.
Hilarious.
He's so funny, man. White man rabies. I guess I don't know. I'm indigenous and you guys are both black, so I don't know if we're talking about any white man rabies here tonight. I don't know if I've ever caught that. So let's go.
Eric.
What about you, Awful? White man rabies? No, you got to comment on that one. That's gonna get me demonetized, or what?
I love how rabies discriminates.
Bischoff, like Vince Russo, Bischoff is a product.
Oh, sorry.
He said how rabies discriminates.
Yeah.
Let X tell you, they'll find some way to make something discriminate in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Something piece.
Everybody could get it.
Of the Attitude Era. Both of their peak years in the business came during its most successful period based on television ratings and viewership. Bischoff levies many well-crafted criticisms at AEW, but this man really hates AEW press secretary Dave Meltzer. Meltzer's never booked wrestling or worked a match in his life, but Sling Blade is perfectly fine stuttering about all of his thoughts of the product over the past several decades. I have no problem with that. Get it how you live. But what I do have a problem with is the hypocrisy
Get it how you live.
of Meltzer getting angry at AEW critics like Bischoff and Russo because they, quote, killed WCW and dealt with the same failures in wrestling that just about everybody has when they get into the business. The only difference between Dave Meltzer critiquing pro wrestling and Eric Bischoff critiquing pro wrestling is Bischoff actually accomplished something in the business, and it's something that has never been touched since. WCW's winning streak over Raw was so iconic, there's now a whole podcast about it, featuring Bischoff and one half of the McGuire twins.
AEW has successfully created a product that is designed to appeal almost exclusively to that segment of the audience that only prioritizes great in-ring action, which is why it's flat.
So if Dave Meltzer can stutter his way through an entire career without having actually been in the business, then who the hell is Sling Blade to get mad at anybody who is now criticizing AEW after actually having
Keeps calling him Sling Blade.
had a career in wrestling? But if Eric Bischoff is AEW's Malfoy, Jim Cornette is its Voldemort. Cornette has built the most successful platform in all of wrestling by offering his fast-talking opinions about how AEW sucks a donkey stick, how none of these glorified micro wrestlers will ever get over, how Warner Brothers Discovery and the Turner Networks are wasting their money on an outlaw mud show run by a money mark who overbids for indie talent with his daddy's checkbook or whatever the fuck, and how all the real men in this business have given way to a low testosterone Cirque du Soleil. Thank you, fuck you, bye. Corny is an OG.
Let's go, Alfred.
Pro wrestling commentary, and he was a bona fide shit talker before podcasting was even a thing. Cornette's worked shoot rants on WWE Raw were underappreciated masterpieces that were well before their time. How do I know? Because Cornette is essentially doing the same thing via podcasting, and it's bigger than just about anything in wrestling until we're number one in a year or two. Like most popular AEW haters, AEW supermarks have tried everything they can to cancel Cornette, even to the point where they work themselves into a shoot every time a Cornette thumbnail drops. Hilarious. Jim Cornette has been canceled from every pro wrestling promotion he's joined, and they think a thumbnail will be the end of his career? Please. Jimmy Cockroach will be here until he's
Jimmy Cockroach.
ambulatory enough to piss on Vince Russo's grave. He said so himself on Dark Side of the Ring. Cornette is the #1 wrestling podcast, but only #2 on this list, because the #1 AEW hater is me.
And you gotta love it. You knew he was gonna pick himself. By the way, he's putting himself over the whole damn video. And yeah, I don't know, man. Hopefully he dives into it a bit. He pulled the curtain back and explained on PWT podcast. If you guys haven't checked that out, Alfred was on the show and he explained, like, he used to talk to Tony Khan. He used to interview him. They used to let him talk to all the wrestlers. As soon as he started getting critical, all of a sudden he went to go do a write-up, and they had locked him out of, like, they had to change some like whole server password to keep, or, you know, they revoked his right to use these goddamn media pictures that AEW provides. And then he's never gotten an interview again. He's never talked to any of them again. So, you know, it's not that Alfred's bitter. It's just Tony Khan and them got bitter. AEW got bitter towards him. And so, of course, he's going to put himself over here.
So he was the canary in the coal mine, essentially. Yeah. He's the one that straightened everybody out, like Stephanie Hypes and Sean Ross Saps. And, like, seriously, like, that's what it sounds like to me. I don't know how old Mr. Kanua is, or, you know, or how long he's been doing it. But if he's the only one that had to go through this, there might be a few others. But if he's the most prominent one, yeah, that it's enough to spook everybody back into being like, yeah, let's just cape for AEW for the next 3-4 goddamn years.
Yeah. I mean, he's been saying this for a little bit. He was at Wrestling Inc. with Raj and them for a minute, because I first found out about Alfred, I think it was probably like 2020, like in 2019, 2020 or so. So he's been fairly like, even when AEW was good, he's been fairly he's been fair. He's been consistent.
Right.
And Alfred is on the only episode of Kill Tony that Bill Burr appeared on.
Oh, okay.
There's a little trivia. I don't know.
Sure.
Alfred Kanua of Pro Wrestling Bits, the king of all pro wrestling media. You don't have to believe me, but you have to believe that you're the best before anybody else will. And like it or not,
truth. That is true. Right
Big
there.
facts.
Yeah, if you aren't your biggest goddamn fan, you better be your own biggest fan, man.
You better learn to love it because we the best, like a DJ Khaled drop. I'm everything you want in an AEW hater. And best of all, I have something that the others on this list don't, and that's the black perspective. Because regardless of what wrestling perspectives are out there, there's always a limitation in not only the black perspective, but black creators being comfortable enough to fully express themselves on their own platform.
And Alfred brought this up on PWT podcast again, not to bring it back to myself.
No, go ahead. Talk your shit, King.
Yeah, but he brought it up and he's like, dude, think about it. Like, look at what NXT is leaning into, like Jada Parker and Sexy Red and all this stuff. And it's like, and it's true. He's like, black people know what's cool and what's trendy. And you can't argue that. Just look at society, the way people talk on Twitter, the way people talk in general, the type of music we consume.
It isn't Twitter.
The way
we
people
literally is the way people dress, talk. You remember that monologue that Cedric the Entertainer had in Be Cool right before he caps the Russian dude? Like that pretty much encapsulates it all. Like we influence American culture as a whole.
I didn't mean just on Twitter. I just mean like the way other people, like, look at how white people talk on Twitter and stuff. You know what I mean? It influences everything. And you can admit that. Like, I mean, how do you not, all the way back to Elvis Presley to today? You know what I mean? Like, black culture influences everything, and especially like what's cool and trendy and all of that. So, I don't know. It's a good point that he brought up, and he dives a little deeper into it here. And some people don't like when people do stuff like this, but it's a perspective. I mean, you can't be, I don't know. I'm listening to anything, you know, I'll listen to any perspective.
Form that they own. People forget this, but I used to be a favorite of AEW. I interviewed just about all their top talent. I spoke with Tony Khan, and I even covered every week of AEW's destruction of NXT during the Wednesday Night Wars. The WWE side hated me for this, by the way. But after one little video about AEW's lack of black excellence, the AEW stan base exposed themselves for who they really are. AEW insurrectionists basically had a January 6th party on my timeline.
Jesus Christ.
No, he's right. I've seen it. I get similar shit when if I make a comment on certain things, I have bots or random people just make it completely not about this is speaking from experience. This is a legit thing that happens.
Awful. What about you? You have any comments so far?
No, I'd like to listen and observe until till the end.
Yep.
Never seen the N-word misspelled so many different ways. This is
I've never seen the N-word misspelled so many different ways.
You'd be shocked.
Shit. That's hilarious, dude.
Timeline. I've never seen the N-word misspelled so many different ways. This is really only the bottom of AEW's fan base, I hope, which is why I still support the product. But it was enough to incentivize me to never hold back when I had an AEW criticism. AEW themselves got so mad at me for pointing out their lack of black main eventers, they changed their password for their media photo library.
Dude, shout out Alfred for telling this whole story on the goddamn PWT podcast and then making a video of like what he elaborated on. Like, he tells me all about this, the story, how it happened. If you guys haven't, if you're interested in this, go check out Pro Wrestle Times podcast where I interview Alfred and we dive deep into all of this. And it's really cool. He made a video about this.
Post it in the chat.
2 weeks after. Yeah, I will here. I'll post the podcast as we're watching this, but yeah, it's awesome that it's really cool. If you want a deeper dive on them revoking his rights and all of that, go check out the podcast there, because he explains what all went down. This is awesome.
So that I'd have to Google their media photos for my articles instead. Like a child taking toys back from a kid he doesn't like. Really showed me. I've drawn the ire from AEW for leaking the Fast National ratings early, which are typically slightly lower than the final number and sometimes slightly higher. Scandalous, right? My analysis of AEW's lack of black excellence played a key role in people like Swerve ultimately being a world champion, because the only reason WWE took over 60 years to crown a black champion of their own was because they didn't have an Alfred Cunningham to call them out during the era of the Old Boys Network. I'm a living embodiment of everything AEW antagonizes, like everybody else on this list. Charismatic, funny, innovative, doesn't take himself too seriously, and thinks Dave Meltzer is full of shit. I'm not just the #1 AEW hater. I'm one of one in everything.
He loves himself, dude. He loves himself. Oh man, it's you got to, man. You got to think you're the shit. But yeah, and shout out his Meltzer hatering too, because I love that. You know what I mean? I think I got that market cornered there. But with the flute and everything.
AEW slander is just one of the services I offer. I'm also #1 in unfiltered commentary about race in wrestling. We're #1 in animated wrestling content, #1 in pro wrestling documentaries, #1 in pro wrestling production, word to Rio and Mav, #1 like Bianca Belair in the WWE draft. There's a lot of lanes in pro wrestling, but the diversity of these lanes is what gives the wrestling media life. Yes, there's an anti-AEW lane that does well for a lot of people. The finger-wagging, enjoy wrestling people will cry about it, but fuck all this lane shaming. Just do you. Everybody tries to give people advice to make people more like them. But no matter what your lane is, my only advice is to try to be more like you, unapologetically. Chris Van Vliet is the happy-go-lucky, harmless daytime interview.
Dude, he butchered that name. It's Van Vliet. Van Vliet. Van Vliet. What did he call it?
He gave it 6 syllables. Van Vliet.
It's fair. People butcher his last name all the time.
Right.
I know. I call it Van Vliet.
Interview guy. Not that there's anything wrong with that. That works for him. In the words of Marshall Mathers, Van Vliet doesn't have to write jokes to get subscribers. Well,
Van Vliet. He's adding extra letters in that motherfucker. This video is almost done, guys. Let's finish it up.
I do, so fuck him and fuck you too, respectfully. But disrespectfully, Cousin Jerry has to scream racial slurs to get subscribers. Well, I don't, so fuck him and fuck his robes. Point is, there's something for everybody in wrestling, even the bigots. I hate that I have to admit that, but yes, you can be a bigot in the pro wrestling space and make a living, just like you could be an alleged predator and still force your way back into WWE. Horrible, I know, but I don't make the rules. The wrestling business is still the Wild West in a lot of ways. And even though every creator gets put in a box, very rarely is that the only thing said creator has to offer. In fact, the only box I want to be inside is your mama's box. What's up? Because if you can grow an
Okay, come on now.
audience talking about AEW's whack-ass product, you can grow an audience doing just about anything. I just seen Jim Cornette give his take on the Kendrick Lamar and Drake beef. Some of our biggest videos have nothing to do with hating on AEW or even AEW in general. You kind of have to be a chameleon to last in the wrestling media. And if being an AEW hater is one of my skin tones, then I'll wear it proudly like the darkest shade of a black fist emoji, because I'm just giving the market what it wants. Check out this video about Tony Khan's intervention and subscribe.
Boom. Yeah. So he nailed it with that last part too. It's just like, I mean, I don't know, dude. The people want flutes. I give them flutes. I don't know what to tell you. You know what I mean? Like,
Man of the people.
Yeah. So it's like, I'm not going to sit here and, but Awful, your thoughts on that video, just overall, to sort of summate that very long segment, starting all the way back with the JD discussion, all through Alfred Konuwa's video here. Your thoughts?
It was a great video. I liked it. I'm a little older than both of you, I'm sure. So with me, the racial aspect doesn't play as much import in my life as it might have others. But I mean, it's great that he's built awareness around it and has brought awareness to it. Him and a few other accounts that I follow, you know, they lean on the racial aspect. I don't mind it at all. But yeah, it's just, for me personally, it plays a smaller part in my life than it would with maybe some younger people.
Yeah,
I can see why. I understand. I used to be 33. You know what I mean? I used to be 29 and 25 and the whole thing. But sometimes life gets in the way, and you know, you have other priorities that take over.
Yeah, it's just it's not even something I really try to even like think about. It's the old corny thing. Oh, the content of the character. But I was just raised like you just don't give a shit about shit like that. I just really don't. I really it was never so I was fortunate too. I grew up like around lots of different cultures and stuff like that. So I don't know, man. It's not.
No, but other than that,
I find a huge deal. But what the thing is that people get so mad when people do bring it up, and it's like, but it's a whole other perspective. And just because you don't get that, like I don't get everyone's perspective. Like people have been to war. I don't their perspective on. I don't know, like some law or some might be different than mine. It's nothing to like.
See, here's the
label
thing with,
and
like,
hate on each other.
For example, Swerve Strickland, and I've said this ever since he became champion and even beforehand. He can cry privately to all of his buddies about like how he's not being used properly. We can cry about that. But until that man bangs and knocks on Tony Khan's door and starts, pulling a little bit of his weight to make sure that he gets the best kind of footing on AEW, it's all on you, man. It's all on Swerve. You've got to kick, punch, hoot and holler to get the things that you want in this kind of business.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. And
black, white, or candy striped.
Black, white, or candy striped. I like that. Speaking of kicking, or sorry, Marty, you got anything to tag onto that or what?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Just in terms of that, because I think we're all like, I think we're around the same age. I know I'm gonna be 36 on Sunday. So.
Oh man, happy early birthday, dude!
Yes,
I'll wish you a happy birthday on the Saturday live stream as well.
Shit, I'll slide through, but at least in terms of my perspective, and just in term and give context, because there's always fucking stupid people like,
you got to pretext everything.
Yeah, you have to nowadays. I think in terms of the racial aspect being brought up, and I'm speaking as somebody Black and Samoan, and in the wrestling space, seeing the influence in that, right. I see things where people take from the culture or they use it. Kind of example in terms of the Samoan side. I remember, Phil, do you remember when you saw it on X when people were giving me shit because I pointed out the fact that the Uafala, the necklace that Roman wears, and like what that means and how important that is. And I think if Cody knew the context of that, I don't think he would have put it on and took that picture.
Yeah.
Because he's not that type of person. But I heard people say, well, what's the big deal? Why is it you guys are making it about race and making it about this? Which is like a foreign perspective, because when it comes to the Black perspective, the reason why it gets brought up is because people borrow from the culture in various ways. And that's completely okay, whether it be music, hair, the way you dress, all that. But when there's a grievance and it's a justifiable grievance, people cringe and want to run from it because that takes having to like look down and acknowledge it. Right. Nobody wants to talk about that because most people say, I don't see color, but we'll get on Twitter and say some racist, stupid shit. Right. But then also champion somebody or dress a certain way. So when it gets brought up, it's just like, no, that perspective is valid because if this other stuff is okay, you need to be able to have those conversations. You don't necessarily get to turn that off. And when he's talking about giving that perspective, it's like, okay, being a minority and a wrestling fan, when people disagree with you, one of the first things they do is make it about race. But if you call something to attention, it's an issue. Oh, why are we talking? You guys are always making it about race. It's like some of that, I think a lot of that is some like stupid conditioning. And then that kind of mirrors
because they can't get past that threshold of thinking. They're at the height of all of this conversation, there should at the most really be an understanding. Now, forget about being right or wrong, because that's the lane that a lot of people take, and they veer off to the left of conversation and want to be right or wrong. No. Just gain an understanding. And through that, you'll gain consideration, respect, and all the other things that come along with it. But once they know that, like, for example, Marty, you were talking about the Samoan necklace. Somebody who's ignorant doesn't want to hear that. They don't even want to understand it. So that's why it veers off into this, well, why you got to take it here? Why you got to take it there?
It's just a necklace.
It's just a necklace and things like that. And it's just like, okay, even if I were to come at you in the way that Google or Wikipedia does about the necklace, you'd still say that's sort of line of thinking. You're not trying to understand why a certain person feels a certain way. You're just trying to be right over them.
They want to be right. And then the thing is like, okay, a lot of it too is they don't want to have those conversations because if they're being honest and having those conversations, they have to share some of those views that they try to sneakily put into their tweets and things that they say.
Yeah,
A lot of people don't want to tell on
ignorance.
themselves. Yeah, they don't want to tell on themselves. And then like in terms of when Alfred brings the shit out, I'm like, it's a valid perspective because it's a lot of the shit that makes the shit cool. Whether
I
it be
agree.
a Swerve or whether it be a Roman, whether it be a Joe, these are all things that,
and even if I
things that help.
And sorry to interrupt, but even if I disagree with some shit, like it doesn't deter me from. It's not like I don't know. I still enjoy it.
Don't belittle somebody's
and
experience.
I love it, and I want to hear it. And even if I'm like, well, exactly, and that's the other thing too. People call it race baiting. I say he's just speaking from his experience. That's the way I interpret it, anyways. But as I was playing WWE 2K24 my GM mode, and my WrestleMania 1 spectated a 15-minute Punk versus Cody Iron Man match. Cody won 3-2 for the World Championship, and it was more entertaining than anything on Dynamite.
Dummy, yeah.
Am I the only one? I'm sitting here as we're chatting. I'm watching this Swerve Roderick Strong match, and I'm sitting here going, like, Swerve is just doing the same match every goddamn time. It's just him doing his spots. He just has all of his shit that he gets in. It's just like, get the next thing in, kind of.
Isn't that everybody? Isn't that like the majority of the roster?
It is, but it just is too
for your champion. It's
save
not
some of the shit.
Stupid.
Save some of the shit. Like Undertaker doesn't dive over the top rope every match, like he does that at the big matches. I feel like Swerve's got to like save some of this cool shit he can do for where it really.
He's gonna have to kill himself. He's gonna have to kill himself during those matches, and then if he gets hurt, then it becomes a problem. But to Awful's original point beforehand, how he was saying like, okay, I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. Swerve has to speak up, but I think a lot of that for a lot of black wrestlers or minority wrestlers, they're conditioned to how the old ways were. You were booked a certain way. You didn't get to say anything. It didn't matter how much you pushed and kicked. It kind of just got pushed. You know what I mean? It got pushed aside because even then he felt like he should have been pushed better when he was in NXT. So I think that there's probably like an underlying like subconscious fear to speak even when you have the pull. Agreed. I wholeheartedly agree. But I think stuff like that will come with time. And even then, I'd probably say be a positive in terms of giving Tony a compliment, like being that other side. And eventually being open. And actually, I don't think Triple H would have that problem in general since he's able to do things the way that he wants. But as long as you have those people that are willing, I think that more people, and as time goes on, especially when they see that they're getting their way with Tony, I think in time it'll balance out.
So also, there's officially an overrun. So it was obvious, but it's overrunning, and this match is still going. So I don't know, man. It's probably 10 more minutes of that.